Well, we're back for a little Bleach Soul Resonance, and today we'll be taking a look at Yoruichi going into some, real big boy content. So you can see we're starting on 13.2 here. I actually did the 13.1. I didn't really know if this team would be able to hack it if I was doing like live commentary, so I decided to switch to just like nailing through the content and, locking in without having to sit here and come up with my thoughts. I wanted to talk about the character. I didn't want to sort of be bogged down by playing and reacting, and because we're getting up to 13.3 here, right? And 13.3 is where I would say that things begin to become a little more real, right? Things become a little more dicey in the game. So didn't want to play around, didn't want a bunch of extra, didn't want a bunch of extra noise sort of clouding me. But yeah, back to Yoruichi. You can see that she is ripping through pretty consistently. My Yoruichi is almost at 40,000 power. If you guys don't know, she got a bunch of dupes in her various materials, her core stamp, her boundary. She has one boundary. This is again all free to play. It's just, if anything, at the time, and this is something I talked about when I was making the account when I had just first started, Yoruichi showing up as much as she did became a bit of a barrier for me. Even now, even with her core stamp being literally Ascension 5, because she just will not stop showing up in my dupes, I wish that those core stamps were, Hitsugaya's core stamp, or Aizen's core stamp, or, Tozen. Do I have Tozen's? I think I do actually have Tozen. I remember I made a video talking about Tozen's, but I wish it was Komamura's core stamp, you know what I mean? Like, there are characters that I still need, and it means that we do sort of have a bittersweet moment when it comes to actually talking about Yoruichi's core stamp just being so high. But as I always say, I like to look at the grass is always greener sort of scenario when it comes to this stuff, which is there is still, like, if you're the biggest Yoruichi fan in the world, if you were in my position, you don't want to hear me talk about how I have her, Ascension 5 and I'm sad about it, right? So all in all, I do love having it. I think Yoruichi is one of the most fun base game SSRs, base game meaning not limited, standard SSRs, I guess. So I do think it is, just fine. Would you guys, let me know, who is your favorite standard banner SSR? Because I think Yoruichi is the most fun of them. I mean, obviously Urahara is probably everyone's favorite standard banner SSR just because he's so good. But I mean, the actual pressing of their buttons, the actual, like, who feels the best to play, I would say it's probably Yoruichi, right? She has such a fun, like, fast, blitzy game style, and, coincidentally, that attack she was doing is called Blitz, so. But yeah, this is what the team I went with. I thought it was good enough, right? I didn't think that, like, I didn't think I would need to go type same, or like a mono team, just because I do think that Urahara and Aizen provide way too much. There's too much of their kit that, like, matters that it exists. Things like the actual, like, giving of crit damage by Urahara, or the all-type damage by Aizen, as well as his debuffs, his defense down, I believe. If that is how that works, and again, if you can get in the comments, you can tell me, or you can tell, just tell others, like, it is essentially a defense down, right? Like, it's a defense break, which, regardless of typing, makes you do a lot of damage, right? That is a big thing. You see that in games like Epic 7. You see that in games like, what are some others that are, like, notable in that way? Honkai Star Rail. You don't really see it in Dokkan. I mean, defense down is a thing in Dokkan, but because characters aren't often able to be consistently debuffed, you don't really look at it as like, oh, this character lowers defense, so he's like goes on every team in Dokkan, right? It's like, which is another thing I talk about sometimes, is that, like, Dokkan by comparison to a lot of other gacha games feels a little too archaic. It feels like they should have modernized in some of these ways before. You can see me, flubbing the end of that fight very sadly flubbing the end of that fight and turning it into a much longer ordeal. But here we're going to get into the Shinji fight, which this is one of the first times I've really fought Shinji at a boss level. Of course, I fought him in the story, but much like when I showed you the Hollow Ichigo fight, You know, be nice, be kind to me. This is one of the first times I really tried this fight out, so I wasn't really sure what I was looking for. I wasn't really sure of everything that I could parry. Because of that, you know, here I catch one, boom, it's pretty nice. Caught that on reaction. Those are those fighting game reactions coming through, because I literally do not remember the last time I saw him do that, so that's pretty clutch. There he goes, zipping around. We're getting stacks up, we're building the Yotahara's ultimate. Yotahara is a character that I saw people being like, how do you build Yotahara to do the most like damage? How do you get him to actually do damage? Let me tell you something. Don't worry about it. You can build Yotahara with as much damage as you want. Eventually, we're just going to start looking at percentages, and that's going to be a big stonewall, right? I mean, look at Yoruichi. Yoruichi does not do a bunch of like massive like one-hitter quitter attacks, right? She's not puff fucking falling out. She's hitting it. She's going back to the well over and over and getting her damage in, right? Like, it's not really a character you're going to see have these big swings. I mean, if you want to see her hit for like 4 million and there's like 3 enemies around, her ult does just blitz like enemies. I don't know if there's like a chain lightning mechanic or something going on there, but all that to say is just like, you can see big numbers for her, but I don't really think that it's in situations that are meaningful. I think it's sort of in situations that are almost sort of fake. But yeah, you can see our girl putting in work. Again, great synergy. 12 or 1.2 million there. That's one of the bigger chunks of damage we do all at once, blitzing him down. We get to Aizen. He comes in with the standing above all, and pretty good damage on that, right? I mean, this is 13-3. So we're officially in the spot where like these characters are like, they have a lot of resistance to Aizen's damage because he's not type. But I mean, 4.4 million in total on that break is not bad at all. 400,000 there on that ult is not bad at all. I do consider it's one of those things where it's like, not the flashiest, not the biggest amount of solitary damage, but you do see that, again, Yoruichi is a character who she swings in, she does her blitz. Like, the counterattack and the blitz are things that I would consider a part of her ultimate, essentially. And as we round out to the minute 40 mark, we are making pretty good progress, right? We've got a few more ravages to get through, a few more breaks to get through, spiritual Ryatsu breaks, and we'll have our boy wrapped up. 767,000 on that one, which means we probably crit there, which is the difference between the 400,000s. Again, at max, she has about a 52% chance to crit, I believe, which is not nothing, but is certainly much lower than, you know, maybe a lot of people would prefer a character who's meant to have this like big, you know, damage revelation, right? I talked about it before. If you can get to 50% crit and then start dumping crit damage, your character is going to explode. Sadly, Yoruichi just does not have the crit damage on my current setup. I need to get her built more. Aizen is just too tempting, though. Aizen makes every team have like 1 million, 1.1 million more damage than they would otherwise have, which is why 7.4 or 741,000 there. Not in break, by the way. So an unbroken 741,000 again. That's what I'm talking about with Yoruichi. It's just so consistent. But yeah, back to the Aizen point. He makes every team he's on have like 1.2 million more damage just in the tank casually when he does stuff like this. Does this one crit? Boom. 429,000 goes up to 6.9. I think that's not a crit. And you might be like, well, you know, he is type resistant. And it's like, yeah, but I think he can get to 1 million in that scenario if he does crit. But, you know, that's just my my thought. Like, that's my suspicion. So 400,000 there, we didn't crit. Again, we continue to just blast away. And you can see that we're just running away with the fight now, right? We're looping our damage. We're swapping out when she goes into the air, which you can swap out during the blitz. Get a little bit of spiritual pressure there, but then just decide to go into the ultimate by Yotahara. Get our support stuff up, right? Like, no reason to, you know, play it long. We go into Aizen here, get a few damage nodules off. We do not go into ult because we just used our technique. If you don't know this, your technique can carry over into your ult, but only if you don't use the follow-up, right? And another thing is that you should ult when you have full like battlefield bar. There he like goes past us sadly. Boom, we hit him for 600,000, not too bad, and we clean up the fight. So I would call that a done deal, and let's get into the rest of the video. Just talk about numbers. 12.6 million, dwarfing the rest of them, right? And there we have it. We have a run by Yoruichi Shion taking on the final stage of 13-3, which I think is a pretty good little benchmark, if I do say so myself. That was the last highest thing I'd been able to get to. We were using off colors, which meant that Yoruichi was, for the most part, carrying the entire bulk of the damage, with her two supports being Urahara and Aizen, of course. And even still, this is why I talk about Aizen being just a bomb of a character. If you compare him to others, it's just completely, you know, it's completely ridiculous what this character gets up to. He is a monster, he is a bomb, he is the guy. He remains at the tippity top. That's why I say that I don't think you can really put characters in Aizen's class in the same way that I don't think you can put other supports in Kisuke Urahara's class. And that is because that when it comes to supports, when it comes to, you know, getting your DPS to really shine, it's always going to be the supports that sort of round out that identity. But Yoruichi definitely able to hold her own. One of the synergies I do really like is that Aizen's battlefield skill is able to proc her counterattack, which is a lot of the damage that we end up doing, right? So you can see that there going into her counter, which is it's a lot. I mean, you're doing counters attack off of that, you're doing counters attack off of her ultimate, but only if you have, is it her weapon or her, yeah, it's after her ultimate. After each ultimate, a counter attack can be manually released, which deals damage and instantly fills spiritual pressure. Spiritual pressure then gives us the ability to use, you know, our, you know, held button when max spiritual pressure, using our blitz, going to stomp after. Like, it's such a good consistent team, such a nice circle. Aizen continues to just be the guy, and Yoruichi, like I said, no slouch either, essentially carrying the entirety of the actual damage. But to me, no one was really, as you saw at the end there, no one was really doing even half of the damage that she was, and, you know, still able to hit for, you know, well into the millions over time. Not the big flashy, you know, 4 million damage ults that Aizen's able to pull off, or at least, you know, Aizen's able to pull off with his final battlefield skill, which is this one, I believe. But still a very powerful, just spammy ultimate. A very powerful spammy ultimate is this one. 988%, like I said. 20% is a buff that she gets, but, you know, instead of having just a big wall of damage in this regard, she sort of packages it there. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the video though. We can look at her gear very briefly. If there's one thing I would say is that, so I have her at 32% crit rate. She does get crit. Is it in her weapon? Each stack of Lightning Seal increases Yoruichi's crit rate by an extra 5% up to 20%. Lightning Seal is the passive she gets off of, what is it? Which one of these is her actual yeah, Yoruichi gains 1 stack of Lightning Seal for 10 seconds each time she uses a technique, counterattack, or special attack. So she essentially always has this up. It's really hard for her not to have 20% bonus crit, which means that at a sum total, we are at 52% total crit. What I would like to do if I'm talking Yoruichi's gear is move her off of crit rate, get her on crit damage. If I was to maximize her, I would get her on crit damage, I would get her attack percent here, I would get her a crit rate here, and then I would get her crit rate here, and then I would get attack percent there. And we would just be like, boost the damage as much as possible in the same way that we sort of have Aizen's stats set up, right? Which is 134% and 50% crit rate there. Obviously, Aizen does have his weapon, which gives him the flat 25% crit rate. But when we think about it, Yoruichi has a conditional, you know, effect to this one, right? So it might be conditional, but it is still 20%. So take 5% off my Aizen's, he goes down to 50%. So we could see Yoruichi have a similar thing if we had the gear for her, but I've mostly been farming Aizen gear, which is a part of the reason why we don't have her on 30s or anything like that. So she could be much better. She could easily tip into the 40,000s, but that is a free-to-play roundup of what Yoruichi looks like, just so there is transparency. When I was doing my 200 of the initial standard banner, I did get a dupe in her, so she does have one dupe. When I was doing core stamp, I literally cannot stop pulling this character's core stamp. I can't help it. So by all accounts, this is a very not free-to-play Yoruichi, but that's what makes her my like dynamo character, right? That's what makes her my almost 40,000 damage power character. And yeah, if I do think that maybe with weapon stamp on Komomura, maybe with core stamp on Komomura, he could have been the character that is better suited for her. But for right now, Aizen is just way too strong, even if he has to hit through resistance. And same with Nemu. I do have her core stamp up to 5, and I do have her weapon stamp obviously up to 2. But getting the gear on her that she can offset just receiving, you know, 32% of 175% crit damage on ultimate is just like, it's sort of hard to pass that barrier. But yeah, hope you liked the video, hope you enjoyed. I've been Lone. Like, if you liked the video, subscribe to the club, we all go make it, and peace.